thank you, Mr. Secretary, for those wonderful remarks. We are grateful for your leadership on a range of issues, but in particular for your championship of charter schools. And good morning to all of you. I hope you're all enjoying the conference as much as I am. That's right. So, as many of you know, I stood before you a year ago at this conference, new to the role of President and CEO at the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. And it's been a remarkable year ever since. I have traveled from coast to coast, visiting with our state charter school organization leaders, with our charter operators, and while at the same time building my team and our strategic plan. But my favorite moments have been the time that I've spent in actual classrooms, meeting with the teachers and the leaders that are making this work possible. Schools like Basis in Arizona, which recently topped the world on the PISA test. Schools like Eva Moskowitz's Success Academies, where every single one of her fourth graders have passed the state science test. That's right. And schools like Crystal Academy in Indiana, which consistently tops the list of best schools in the entire state of Indiana by the Indiana Department of Education. I know representatives from many of these schools and others are here in the audience today. My goal over the next year is to visit many, many more charter schools, as I think that's really where the action is and where I can learn the most. I want to thank you not only for the great work that you do every day in your actual schools, but for also arming us with the information we need to fight for charter schools in legislatures, in Congress, and at the White House. Now, as my good friend Andy Samarick recently wrote in his wonderful book, The Urban School System of the Future, simply put, our school districts right now are not delivering on the complex needs of the student populations they serve. Okay? By contrast, many of our charter schools have proven what many said was impossible. For example, as we're going to hear about in a few minutes, in 2012, Achievement First students performed better than their peers in every single subject area compared to school districts in New York and Connecticut across all grade levels. In recent years, participation rates and average test scores for the Hispanic students attending KIPP schools has risen simultaneously. And in 2012, 100% of Uncommon Schools high school seniors took the SAT test and scored on average 20 points above the college readiness benchmark set by the College Board. And if these examples are not enough, take a look at New Orleans, where over 80% of the students are attending charter schools. New Orleans has now closed the proficiency gap compared to the state by 50%. Okay? I don't know about you. But if this information doesn't want to make you go out there and advocate for charter schools, I don't know what will. So what I would like to do now is to tell you a little bit about the state of our movement and what the Alliance will do over the next year to best support our growth and everything that you do in your individual schools. So first, some facts. As Secretary Duncan mentioned, we now have more than 6,000 public charter schools around the country, serving a little over 2 million students every day. We now have 42 states and the District of Columbia that have enacted charter school laws. America has more charter schools now than some entire nations have schools, including Finland, Taiwan, New Zealand, and Belgium. Last fall, we found out that in over 100 school districts at least 10% of the student population was attending a charter school. And some of our networks, like National Heritage Academies, KIPP, Charter Schools USA, and Academica, now serve more students than some of our largest school districts. By any measure, we are growing at a rapid clip. But our reach is also being felt in very meaningful ways. This past fall, for the first time, we were able to get voters to go to the ballot box to cast a vote in favor of charter schools in a red state and in a blue state. Washington State voters approved a new charter school law molded after the National Alliance's model law. And in Georgia, voters changed their state constitution to allow for a statewide entity to authorize charter schools. And yet, in what may be the most compelling measure of all, the hopes and dreams of nearly 1 million students currently rests on a charter school waitlist. Now, let me tell you a bit about what we plan to do at the National Alliance over the next year to best support the sector and meet the needs of all the names on these waitlists. Our advocacy is going to focus on 3 areas: enhancing charter school quality, promoting innovation, and ensuring that our students get their equitable share of funding. So let's start with quality. Now, a lot has been said and should be said about the quality of public schools of all kinds. So we decided to take a look at the last set of the most rigorous studies done on charter schools. And guess what we found? 15 out of the 16 studies on charter schools, 15 out of the last 16 studies, including the latest Credo study, showed that charter school students outperformed their peers in traditional public schools, and those schools closed the achievement gap. Charter schools also continue to disproportionately top the list of best high schools on the lists put together by Newsweek, US News and World Report, and the Washington Post. In fact, even though we're only about 5%, we have only about 5% of the market, over a quarter of the schools on these lists are currently charter schools. And I'm personally also very excited and proud that the National Alliance has recently received the grant from the Kern Family Foundation to encourage charter high schools to participate in the international PISA test. So hopefully by next year, we're also going to be able to show you some information about how our charter schools are competing or are being benchmarked against the world. I'm also very proud of the work that the sector has done in terms of self-policing. Again, as Secretary Duncan mentioned, we have now closed more than 500 charter schools over the past 3 years, which is about 10% of the market. We know we have a lot more work to do in certain areas, but we are making good progress. We're going to work much more closely with the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, with our state association partners, and other advocacy organizations to make sure that every single charter law enacted from now on places a premium on creating the medium in which high-quality charters can thrive, while at the same time closing down our poorest performing charter schools. 2 decades of experience with charters has also taught us that poor academic performance in years 1 and 2 could be an early sign of problems that may be coming up ahead. We have to do a much better job of identifying our problems early on and addressing them. In fact, the flexibilities and the freedoms inherent in charter schools make it much easier for us to evolve faster than the traditional public school system. We must take advantage of this flexibility. So on to innovation. Our schools continue to be laboratories and centers of innovation. Innovation is at the heart of many charter school laws around the country right now. We have to make sure that our elected officials protect the autonomies and the freedoms inherent in these charter laws. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're embracing those reforms like the Common Core standards that are currently being discussed. If implemented with fidelity, Common Core and the assessments attached to them are going to make it easier for us to compare our schools to one another across state lines. They will provide better information for parents to make decisions about where to send their children to school. And they will better prepare our students for the challenges they will face when they enter college and the workforce. But other reforms, like one-size-fits-all federal teacher evaluation systems, no matter how well-meaning, can unnecessarily duplicate the work that we're already doing in our charter schools. As a sector, we have to band against those government rules and regulations that weaken our ability to serve children, but unite and band for those reforms that stand to benefit our students. And finally, last but not least, a word about equity. Now, as you know, compared to our traditional public school counterparts, we serve more minority students and low-income students at this juncture. Yet, our students, on average, receive only 70 cents to every dollar that follows students to traditional public schools. This is where our work with our state partners and our Association of Public Charter School Attorneys will play a great role in rectifying this disparity. Last year in Atlanta, the district illegally held millions of dollars from charter schools to support state pension funds that charter school teachers could not tap into. We worked closely with the Georgia Charter Schools Association and some schools in Atlanta, and we fought back and we won in the first round. We have to do a lot more work in this area, but our students deserve no less than their peers in the traditional public school system, and equitable funding has to occur if we want to scale with quality. So it's in this spirit now that I want to remind you again about my call to action from yesterday. If you haven't done so already, please visit the National Alliance booth or send an email to the address behind me. We want to make sure that every single one of us in this room today takes advantage of this opportunity to send a message to Congress that the charter school sector deserves more investments. You're going to hear in a moment from my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Howard Fuller, about some of the other work that we've done together over the past year. But first, I want to close with a short story. The young man you see in this picture, Lemery White, graduated last month from Frederick Douglass High School, an ISEF school in Los Angeles. As a result of the opportunities afforded to Lemery from this great charter school, this young man, who was raised by a single father in Crenshaw, an area known for high crime and poor performing schools, graduated from ISEF with a 4.07 GPA. He went on to become a youth minister and a community leader fighting against domestic violence. But this fall, Lemery is not going to be the only individual from his family to go on to college, but he's going to walk onto the campus of Syracuse University on a full scholarship. Stories like this are why charter schools exist, so that many, many more students like Lemery can go on to reach their dreams. Thank you for having me.